When installing a 12 kilowatt fixed generator with an automatic transfer switch, it is necessary to install a 200 amp disconnect after the meter and before the automatic transfer switch. This disconnect acts as the main disconnect for the generator system. It allows for the safe isolation of the generator from the utility supply. If a 200 amp disconnect is installed after the meter, the downstream equipment is treated as subpanels. This means that the neutrals and grounds must be separated. In this configuration, the neutral bus and the ground bus must be isolated from each other at the subpanels. This separation is crucial for compliance with the electrical codes. If the existing 200 amp panel has a common neutral and ground bus, it must be separated to comply with current codes. This separation can be achieved by installing a grounding electrode conductor, also known as a GEC, and isolating the neutral and ground buses. There are several benefits to separating neutrals and grounds. Firstly, it reduces the risk of electrical shock hazards. Secondly, it improves the reliability of the electrical system. Thirdly, it helps protect against voltage surges. Fourthly, it ensures compliance with current electrical codes. The 200 amp disconnect must be properly rated. Specifically, it must be rated for the maximum output capacity of the generator. It is important to note that all electrical work must be performed by a qualified electrician. The electrician must adhere to all local electrical codes. For detailed guidance on installation and wiring, refer to specific electrical codes and the generator manufacturer's instructions. These resources provide comprehensive information to ensure a safe and compliant installation. Understanding the concepts of neutral and ground separation is vital for ensuring the safety and proper functioning of electrical systems, particularly when integrating generators with automatic transfer switches. In a typical electrical system, the neutral conductor provides a return path for current to the source, which is usually the utility transformer. The grounding conductor, on the other hand, provides a low impedance path for fault currents to return to the source, facilitating the operation of overcurrent protection devices such as circuit breakers and fuses. When the neutral and ground conductors are bonded together at the main service panel, as is common in many residential and commercial installations, any fault current can flow through both the neutral and ground paths. However, when a generator and automatic transfer switch are introduced, this configuration can create potential safety hazards and operational issues. The primary reason for separating the neutral and ground conductors in subpoles, or in this case the equipment downstream of the transfer switch, is to prevent circulating currents from flowing through the grounding system. When the neutral and ground are bonded at multiple points, such as at the main service panel and at the generator, a parallel path for neutral current is created through the grounding conductors. This can result in unwanted current flowing through the grounding system, which can cause several problems. Firstly, it can lead to nuisance tripping of ground fault circuit interrupters, known as GFCIs. GFCIs are designed to detect small imbalances in current between the hot and neutral conductors, and if current is flowing through the grounding conductor, it can falsely trigger the GFCI, causing it to trip. Secondly, circulating current in the grounding system can create electromagnetic interference, known as EMI. This EMI can disrupt the operation of sensitive electronic equipment and can also pose a safety hazard. Thirdly, in extreme cases, circulating currents can cause overheating of grounding conductors and equipment enclosures, increasing the risk of fire. To prevent these problems, electrical codes typically require that the neutral and ground conductors be separated in subpanels and that the grounding conductor be connected to a grounding electrode system, such as a ground rod or a metallic water pipe, at each subpanel. This ensures that the grounding system provides a dedicated low impedance path for fault currents without carrying normal neutral current. In the case of a generator installation with an automatic transfer switch, the transfer switch is designed to automatically switch the electrical load from the utility power to the generator power during a power outage. When the transfer switch is in the utility power position, the neutral and ground are bonded at the main service panel. However, when the transfer switch is in the generator power position, the neutral and ground must be bonded at the generator. This is typically accomplished by a bonding jumper at the generator. To ensure proper operation and safety, it is essential that the neutral and ground conductors are separated in any subpanels downstream of the transfer switch. This means that the neutral bus and the ground bus must be isolated from each other, and a separate grounding electrode conductor must be run from the subpanel to the grounding electrode system. The grounding electrode conductor, or GEC, connects the subpanel's ground bus to a grounding electrode. This grounding electrode can be a ground rod, a metallic water pipe, or another approved grounding electrode as specified by the electrical code. The size of the grounding electrode conductor is determined by the size of the service entrance conductors or the equivalent for a subpanel. Refer to the electrical code, such as the National Electrical Code, also known as NEC Table 250.66, for the appropriate sizing of the grounding electrode conductor. When separating the neutral and ground conductors in an existing 200 amp panel, it is important to follow a specific procedure to ensure safety and compliance. Firstly, de-energize the panel by turning off the main breaker. This is a critical safety step to prevent electrical shock. Secondly, identify the existing neutral and ground buses. In many older panels, these buses may be combined, with both neutral and ground conductors terminating on the same bus. Thirdly, disconnect all of the grounding conductors from the neutral bus. These are typically bare copper wires or green insulated wires. Fourthly, install a separate ground bus in the panel. This bus should be securely mounted to the panel enclosure and electrically isolated from the neutral bus. Fifthly, connect all of the grounding conductors to the new ground bus. Ensure that each conductor is securely terminated and that there are no loose connections. Sixthly, install a grounding electrode conductor from the ground bus to the grounding electrode system. The size of this conductor must be appropriate for the size of the service entrance conductors, as determined by NEC Table 250.66. Seventhly, verify that the neutral bus is properly isolated from the panel enclosure. There should be no direct connection between the neutral bus and the metal enclosure of the panel. Eighthly, label the panel as a subpanel with separated neutrals and grounds. This will alert future electricians to the modified configuration of the panel. Ninthly, re-energize the panel by turning on the main breaker. After re-energizing the panel, it is important to test the grounding system to ensure that it is functioning properly. This can be done using a ground impedance tester, which measures the resistance of the grounding path. The resistance should be low, typically less than 1 ohm, to ensure that fault currents can quickly return to the source and trip the overcurrent protection device. In addition to separating the neutral and ground conductors and installing a grounding electrode conductor, it is also important to ensure that all of the wiring in the generator system is properly sized and protected. The conductors must be rated for the maximum current that they will carry, and they must be protected by overcurrent protection devices such as circuit breakers or fuses. The size of the conductors and overcurrent protection devices must be determined in accordance with the electrical code. For example, NEC Article 310.15 provides guidance on conductor ampacity, and NEC Article 240.4 provides guidance on overcurrent protection. When selecting a generator for a residential or commercial application, it is important to consider the power requirements of the loads that will be connected to the generator. The generator must be sized to handle the total load, including both continuous loads and intermittent loads. Continuous loads are loads that operate for extended periods of time, such as refrigerators, freezers, and lighting. Intermittent loads are loads that operate for short periods of time, such as air conditioners, water heaters, and power tools. To determine the total load, add up the power requirements of all of the connected loads. The power requirements of each load can be found on the nameplate of the appliance or equipment. The nameplate typically lists the voltage, amperage, and wattage of the load. Once the total load has been determined, select a generator that has a power rating that is equal to or greater than the total load. It is also important to consider the starting surge of certain loads, such as air conditioners and motors. These loads can draw a significantly higher current when they first start up, which can overload the generator. To account for the starting surge, it is common to multiply the running wattage of these loads by a factor of 2 to 3. In addition to sizing the generator properly, It is also important to select a generator that is appropriate for the application. There are two main types of generators: portable generators and standby generators. Portable generators are typically smaller and less expensive than standby generators. They are designed to be moved around and used for temporary power needs such as camping, construction sites, and emergency backup power. Standby generators are larger and more expensive than portable generators. They are permanently installed and connected to the electrical system of a building. They are designed to automatically start up during a power outage and provide backup power to the entire building. When selecting a standby generator, it is important to consider the fuel source. Standby generators can be powered by gasoline, propane, or natural gas. Gasoline generators are typically the least expensive, but they require a readily available supply of gasoline. Propane generators are more expensive than gasoline generators, but they can run for longer periods of time on a single tank of propane. Natural gas generators are the most expensive, but they can run indefinitely as long as there is a natural gas supply. In addition to the generator and automatic transfer switch, there are several other components that are typically included in a generator installation. These components include a battery charger, a fuel tank, an exhaust system, and an enclosure. The battery charger is used to keep the generator's battery charged so that it is ready to start up during a power outage. The fuel tank stores the fuel that is used to power the generator. The exhaust system vents the exhaust gases from the generator to the outside. The enclosure protects the generator from the weather and reduces noise. When installing a generator, it is important to follow all of the manufacturer's instructions and to comply with all applicable electrical codes. A qualified electrician should perform the installation to ensure that it is done safely and correctly.